Good morning, Sint Maarten. What's up? What's cooking? Let me hold on a few minutes. Let me just see that I am on. If anybody is hearing me, please just tag that I can see that I am live and that there's audience. Once we have the first one, we are good to go. So I'll just hold on a minute and see if we have anybody, and then I will proceed with the live. So I'll just take a sip of coffee. We are on. Blessed morning to the first one that tagged in. So, what we have in store for us today? Well, first of all, I think I was truly overjoyed when I read on the front page on Friday's newspaper that the Dow Musical Foundation is leading the revival of the Junior Calypso show. I think that is great news for this country, great news for the art form. Dow was a guy, like it or not, always has been a front runner and pusher of music, of theater, yes or no? That's one. The second thing will naturally be also, can they hold the magical eight together when the pushing and shoving starts for who wants what and who demands what? So again, that's what's really going to play a role in if we have snap elections or if we are going to ride it out until January 2024. I was also happy to read that the community police officers took it upon themselves, especially the Cold Bay, Simpson Bay area, to tackle the street lights that are giving a problem because of the functionality, which means road safety and pedestrian safety has been put to the front. And I think that's a great initiative by the community police officers, and I think they should be commended for such. You know, we're always fast to jump on the police when something goes wrong, but here this is a great example of them going the extra mile to ensure that their neighborhood is taken care of. So kudos, sir. Well done. Also, great news that the marketplace is going to be rebuilt with funds from Royal Caribbean. You know, normally I wouldn't be touching these things, but I think it's time. This marketplace has been a topic of discussion since Hurricane Irma 2017, when they were removed upon the instructions of the ministers, and some of them were placed at the Walter Plans, some were placed by passing rank, then those had to be removed. I'm telling you it because I was involved. But I'm happy to see that we are now going to get back something structurally correct. I'm happy for the vendors, no more tents unnecessarily every time it rains. Your stuff getting wet, I think is a great thing, and I'm happy that Royal Caribbean as a partner through the input of the port has been able to come up and say, let's revive, let's fix part of Phillipsburg's the right way. To the minister that was pulling this, the acting minister of Theatre, Umar Otley, congratulations. And according to me, you're going to still be around for a while, don't worry. A lot of rumors, but until the Prime Minister says something, and I'll get back to that later. So, I noticed the laundromat is open once again. The laundromat of changing personnel. This is the umpteenth time that the Ministry of Education, the Minister of Education's cabinet is shifting personnel. And I want to believe this has to do that the ideologies are clashing with each other. The people that are working for the minister and the minister are not seeing eye to eye, most probably on matters that might have to do with education or with integrity, and has led now to even the chef de cabinet leaving. I was truly amazed when I heard that one, because the good gentleman was his campaign manager. When your campaign manager walks away, something is dead wrong. And he didn't walk away because he didn't want the job. So I'm going to get to the bottom of that one yet, because that was an interesting something, but it's very unfortunate that it's happening once again. Also, I understood, and I picked this one up off for the talk show from Mr. Dick, that the classrooms at the Belvedere Community Center, which were from the Martin Luther King School, have to move because the community center needs their space. Again, the importance is you have this school, the Martin Luther King School, scattered all over the place because the school is not functioning properly. Too many roofs are not. But up until this day, They haven't even started the repairs there. They didn't start the repairs either with the school in Sister Marie Laurence in Middle Region. Look, I don't want to bash a minister for things that are not in his control, because he has no control over the NRPB. They pretend to, that they're going to tell them this, and they go, hey, you have nothing to say. It's not your money, you have nothing to say. But the Prime Minister and the steering committee, they can knock on the door of the donor, which is the Netherlands, and ask them to put the World Bank in first gear at least. Because when it comes to the schools, they have been in neutral too long. Look how long they are fixing Milton Peters College. This is a joke. It's a complete joke. But we talk about building this country and making it resilient. So I don't want to beat up on the minister too much, but the minister should shut his mouth and don't talk about it if he doesn't have a concrete something. Because everything he has said thus far regarding the schools has not panned out. Has not panned out. So I think he shouldn't talk about it no more with all his projects and all of this. Hush him out. Focus on education. And by the way, the people looking for the computers, you know, and the billboards that they were going to put on the digital billboards, the class is asking for them. The wall's still empty. The Minister of Romy, that's another one. I'm happy that the minister took the initiative, go to the newspaper and say, listen, move your stuff from alongside the road, otherwise I will move it at your expense. Bold statement. Some people started to move. I saw the blue chassis them that were painted up and fixed up there alongside the road. They were moved. They were moved over the weekend. But a lot wasn't moved. And a lot isn't going to be moved. But I find it remarkable that he picked that road alone. Because there are other roads in Sint Maarten with the same nonsense. Why you pick that road? Because you pass there every day to go home. That's why you pick that road. You see, this is the problem. If we're going to deal with something, let's deal with it across the board. Not only a bunch of trailers there, we got car wrecks all over the place. In parking lots, we have car wrecks piling up. On the ball field, I think there are 1 or 2 car wrecks now piling up beside the garbage bins. You don't need permission to pick that up. You can just pick it up at the expense of whoever owns it, since that's the threat with the trailers. But okay, I understand I'm making it a little too complicated for you now. But what I'm totally lost about is that today we are 13 months further and we still don't have a contract for the trenches and the waterways. We went a whole year without cleaning. Consequences was that major flood they had. Could it have been prevented? I don't know. If the trenches were cleaned and the water management was up to par the way it should have been and the pumps were working, I think it would have been a different story. But I'm not a fortune teller, so I'm not going to pretend. I know water can be very difficult to handle, especially when you have no clue what to do. What about the contracts for the public toilets? What about the district cleaning? What about the equipment on the landfill? All of these are things that were tendered. And this minister, the reason I bring this up is because he came out. Oh, the past, we didn't know what we were doing, and he's going to fix it, and he's going to do that. You can't do deadly squat. You realize that yet? You can't get a tender out. The one tender you got out, the ombudsman told you you're a crook. You're a fraud. You were not transparent. And you had your boys and girls in parliament protect you. So please, when you want to pretend, do that at home. Don't do it in public. Because I can call you out for sure. I know Vromi. You wish you knew Vromi. What you can tap yourself on the shoulder is destroying Vromi. But we're going to come to that one today. Today we're going to discuss that. Because I'll tell you something. All the changes this good gentleman has spoken about in Vromi were a waste of his breath. Because he hasn't. He hasn't. Some of the staff in Vromi have gone beyond the call of duty to try to make things happen. And he takes the credit for it. But when things go wrong, he points to people and tries to fire them. the face of a coward. That's the face of a fake. But I believe it's also important that SZV and the Minister of VSR come together and explain to the public of St. Maarten, maybe with an illustration drawing, and a timeline, what's exactly going to happen with the SZV project in Cahill. Because I know they said that they will move the basketball court, and in that area they were going to build a building, and then they're going to move down where the pool be, build a new basketball. Rest, we need to honestly look at how we can do this, because you don't want to create a negativity if it's not necessary. If something needs to be brought to the public, I'm happy at something when I know better, because I have spoken to the people, so I believe and I ask that you all come out and make this known. The CFT is asking or is instructing us using the King. I think it's very important that we get some clarity on that, because that can be a few million guilders here and there for the country. Minimum wage, a decent minimum wage, let me say this, a livable wage, you know? A livable wage for me means you can live above the poverty line. What is the poverty line in St. Maarten? Nobody knows. They cannot give you a guilder figure. I think the closest people that came to a livable wage was the anti-poverty platform of Mr. Yezeroon. I think they came around 3,500 guilders. I think that's where they were. Curaçao's livable wage right now, calculated by the SER for their minimum wage calculations, was 2,615 guilders, I believe. 3,500 guilders, 2,600 guilders, looks like a big difference, looks like about 30%. But guess what? St. Maarten is 30% more expensive than Curaçao. That's factual. That we know. So I don't have the figures too bad off. I think it's a little high still, but I don't think it's too bad off. But the question is this: can the country afford with a single pillar industry called tourism? And right now we are more in the backpack tourism, which is the cruise tourism, than the high-end tourism that brings in us less money. Can we afford a minimum wage that is tagged to, for example, 3,000 or 3,500 guilders for a mother of two running a household? The answer is no. We cannot. Our economy cannot do that. So we're going to have a serious problem with that. But that doesn't mean that we have to despair. We have to just start thinking out of the box. How do we help these people? The Minister of VSR, the Honorable Minister Otley, just had an increase from 8 guilders 84, I believe, to 9 guilders 95. So about a guilder plus in minimum wage. When you put it in perspective, it's about 12%, 12.5% increase compared to what they had. That's what happened. And that's a huge increase. That's a huge increase. Does it change the pain on the small man? Absolutely not. It doesn't. You know why? Because of the inflation on the other end of the story. The inflation in this country is going through the roof. It's not going to stop. It's going to get more expensive. While the European Union and the Americans, the Feds, are jacking up interest rates to keep the inflation under control, things do get more expensive. And because things get more expensive, the guilder you give me extra can go some way, but not all the way. So, what does this mean? How do we go and think outside the box to do something? I believe we can cover the gap between the minimum wage and the projected livable wage with subsidies. We can give house rent subsidy. We can give, for example, subsidies when it comes to electricity, so utilities, water and light. We can give subsidies there. We can give subsidies when it comes to internet, where school-going children are involved in the household. We can give subsidies when it comes to food vouchers. We can give subsidies when it comes to public transportation, with a swiping system for the seniors and the school fare for the children them using the school buses. We can give subsidies for school fees. These are just a few subsidies, and I'm sure there are more. But these are the ones that touch people directly and have a significant impact in the well-being, the social well-being of an individual and their family. Now, who earns minimum wage? 54% of this country does. Think on individuals, a mother or a father with children, a standalone. I think 90% is mothers, 10% is fathers. Think on individuals that work one minimum wage job, just one job, an individual. Think on people 50 years and over that are working at this point in time and are not getting a good job because of their age and the cost to employ. Think about part-time persons working. Think about people with a handicap. Look, all of these things, and I don't want you to believe that this is an easy something to do, but it is something that we can do. It is something that we have to start saying, this is a priority. Because the question to answer is, where does the money come from? That's the bottom line. Where does it come from? Now, I'm going to give you an idea how we can get to this money. Because you see, a lot of us, we too often say, oh God, we can't get the money, so don't go do that. That's craziness. No, we can get the money. We truly can get the money. The question is, do we want to get the money? Are we willing to put in the work and make certain sacrifices? Because if we don't want to do that, then let's stop this discussion about a livable wage. Politically, I have always stood with the seniors. And when I joined the Now Party, one of the critical things I said is we need to combat poverty. We need to make sure that people can live above the poverty line in our country. I have spoken out about money leaving this country. And people say, yeah, but it's my money, I earned it. Yes, you earned it in my country. It needs to circulate a little bit in my country. You cannot make $1,000 and send home $800 and live off of $200, because then I imported poverty in my country. And I'm combating poverty in another man's country. You see, that's a sacrifice we're going to have to make. Another thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get rid of turnover tax and bring in import duties. Turnover tax gives for every percent about 30 million. So with 5%, we earn about 150 million on turnover tax, give and take. So remember, turnover tax is basically made on the cost of goods. On the cost of goods. And people sell the cost of goods, maybe about 10% more expensive, 15% more expensive. So you have an idea also of what the import value is. Because when you import stuff here, you import it at a value. And customs knows that value. So what we're going to do is we're going to tax the imports. And if we make an agreement with the French side, whom is, by the way, willing to do it, because it has been on the table before, but we, for one reason or the other, keep dilly-dallying around it, to make import duties 8%. And for my part, if the French want to go along, to 10%. It would mean that the income, I said turnover tax was 30 million for a percentage point. I told you just now about 15% is profit in the turnover tax. So let's give and take, and say from the 30%, about a seventh is profit, so it won't be at the cost coming in. So if I divide 30 by 7, you'll realize we are going to 4. So let's say 25 million. 25 million is then at that point in time the number per percentage point. I have 8%, that would be 200 million. I have 10%, that's 250 million. So you just realized by a and this is not complicated, because everybody has a bill of lading when it comes in. So the difference is now you are moving the sales tax after the fact that the people sold it to now an import duty. And you're not telling them that they have to pay it as the product comes in, because that means now they got to front the money. And there's going to be a transition period, I would say maybe give and take a year, so that the people can build up their reserves so that they can pay when the goods come in, they pay for them. So you can create a transition period. But I just showed you how quite easily 50 to 100 million guilders can be earned additionally. We got to get off of this nonsense about, oh, they're going to import it through the French side. The French side are also doing 8%. And they are 10 times more stricter with enforcement and checks than we are. All we just be doing for is looking for guns and drugs. But the customs have a complete system that they can easily, everything that's on the bill of lading goes in with a value. So they know the values. So if you want to do it, government, you can do it. Don't come with no Nancy stories. You know what I'm talking about is a fact. So do it. Because then you have 100 million, and then what we just discussed here, I'm trying to help those that are earning a minimum wage, not a livable wage, a minimum wage, will be able to get some help. Because remember, minimum wage is one thing, but you know how many people in Sint Maarten are living under 3,000 guilders? 70%. At least 70% lives under 3,000 guilders. So you got a lot of work to do. You got a lot of money to raise. Economic diversification is a fact. It's not a request, it's not a wish. It's a fact if we want to take the people of Sint Maarten out of the poverty that we have them in. That's what we should be focusing on. But, you know, again, like I said, if we don't want to do this, then let's say so to the people. Because then it's time to change those that sit there. Not because they aren't competent, most probably, but because they aren't willing. And when you aren't willing, you shouldn't be sitting in a position that needs to do things for the country. The solidarity cuts of 12.5% and 25% are to be lifted effective by month's end, but retroactive to December 31st, 2022. These were, I believe, the Prime Minister's words in a press conference last week, or a combination of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance when one of the media houses asked the question. And I'm happy, I'm extremely happy that they're rolling back the 12.5% and the 25%. That means everybody will get back their money finally. What caught my eye was that they said that to roll back the government-owned companies, government-subsidized entities, that they couldn't do that yet because the top income earners was tied to that, had to be published first, and that had to be finished first for them to do that. I didn't understand that one at all, because these are three independent laws. You had the law, the solidarity law, the 12.5% law that was on the civil servants slash government-owned companies slash 50% or more subsidized entities. That's how the teachers and all them got involved. That was one law. So how, in God's name, can you say you're rolling back the civil servants, but you're not rolling back the rest? They were the same law. You're going to have to come out and explain that better. Because that isn't so. The top income earners was a totally separate law. And the politicians was a totally separate law. Those are the three laws. The Dutch government told you very clearly, amend the top incomers law and make it permanent, because it was not to be permanent. The three laws were to be of an unspecified time, but never permanent. Now we have given in to making the top income earners a permanent law. And the fight in the beginning was that they had to use the slashed prime minister's salary with 25% as the departure point. And the government said, no, this is crazy, because the prime minister's salary will go back up. So we're going to use the real preset salaries, and we will go from there. My problem is this. While I understand wholeheartedly that we only have so many people, we only earn so much money, that people to manage GB, TLM, BTP, airport, harbor, central bank, whatever you want to name it, SLS, if you want good people, you're going to pay good money. The market, as long as the market needs these type of people, you're not going to get them for free. The central bank, the president owns $1 million, he earns $1 million guilders a year. That's twice the salary of the prime minister, but that didn't get cut. You see, we sometimes don't even know what's happening in our country, but we screaming and fighting. The central bank president's salary was not cut. That's simple it is. He negotiated his contract. He said, that's what I'm working for, otherwise go find another joker. You see, because he is needed. These are the things. Now, in the same breath, we have appointed people in positions that are not valued the money we are paying them, but because of politics we appointed them. Now, that's a different story. But you know who has to regulate that? The government. You should feel ashamed that the Dutch got to come and tell you to go fix that. But hey, we like it when Massa hits us a lick on the backside and threatens us with certain things. But at least we turning back the salaries, the 12.5% for everybody. So come the end of January, God's willing, if everything was published in time and payrolls were not made, everybody will get back their old salaries as was agreed upon. I think that's a nice thing. So congratulations to all civil servants and all those that partook in the solidarity cuts. And let's see where it goes from here. Now, there's a whole to-do right now with the Justice Minister, the decrees, the payments, the advice, even MPs now getting involved about who should respect Parliament and who is incompetent. Now look, I spoke on this issue last week, and I was called the next day and explained by the minister in a very pleasant voice. Let me be clear. Very good. I have a lot of respect for the minister, and I know she respects me. And we had a good conversation about what really happened. And it became clear to me that what I read in the Herald was not what the situation was. And I thus went off on the wrong footing with the 15 decrees. The decrees were signed. They were signed. So they are not waiting by Governor Ajamu to be signed. So I want to apologize for going that direction. But I went that direction because that's what the media said. And if I can't even trust our own media, then it becomes much more difficult, because then we're back to the school children say. And I try not to do that. I try to get as much factual information, and the media, I want to consider the media factual. I want to. But I got a little scared when I had a discussion with the minister. Now, look, again, what caught me now is, because naturally after this discussion, a whole load of things started to come out. Now, there was a question hour in November. And in that question hour, the minister said that she brought in a company from Curacao to do the calculation from 2010 until present to understand who has to be paid what and who has to be paid how much, based on, because some of them already got money. You can remember that election stunt back in December 2019, with the monies from the buyover from UTS, I think 9 or 10. They used a lot of that money to pay police officers 50% of whatever they were owed. And naturally, we know the stories. I am not going to worry going into that anymore. We know what that cost. And the minister was very clear about it. She said she ain't taking no blame for what the previous administration and the previous minister did. And very smart to do that. Don't get caught in that ant's nest. Let those politicians explain what they did in November 2019 or December 2019. Let them explain it. That's not your fight. But, Minister, you also stated that you had a group that made a complete financial analysis for you. My question then would be, where is that report? Didn't that report go with the advice to the governor? Otherwise, I don't understand what kind of advice was sent. Because the governor wants to know what it's going to cost. Now, if you did a financial review and recap from 2010 to 2022, then you know exactly how much money has to be paid. And how you spread out over 5 years, that's one line. If it's 10 million, 2 million, 2 million, 2 million, 2 million, 2 million. And you got it. So something needs to be explained better. I find it very unfortunate, though, what happened afterwards. Look, if the consultants in Curacao didn't do their job right, or it wasn't complete, then say so, Minister. Then just say so. But I understand your frustration, Minister. I truly understand your frustration that you believe political games are being played. And maybe even me, because I speak out a lot. But, Minister, when somebody has political ambition, that doesn't mean to say, and it isn't yours to judge, that what they are doing is incorrect. As a union, they have a job to do. And there are a lot of union leaders that very often confide with politicians. Very often. And when that happens, they label the union leaders political allies. So I think when you got emotionally distracted from the issue and you went after the organizations and you went after the person, I think you made a critical mistake. I think it deserves an apology, because that's not the Minister of Justice that Sint Maarten needs. This is not a personal matter. And at all times in politics, you are going to get critics that are going to speak out against you and the manner you do things. That doesn't mean to say that they are doing that because they want your downfall or they have a political agenda. I don't think the minister believes that the union, the NAPB union leader, has a political agenda to take you down. I don't think you can believe that. I wouldn't believe it if I was you. The problem is this, because legally speaking now, the NAPB is not, listen carefully people, is not a member of the CCSU. They are an observer. They don't have enough members to be a member. The APFO, the other union at the police, they, yes, are a member of the CCSU. The union leader of the NAPB cannot sign any agreement on behalf of the CCSU. They can go along. They can support it. But they cannot sign it nor approve it. So, to say you thought you were dealing with big people, I think you stepped out of your bound again. Because legally, they were not the ones who put a signature on the paper. And then came the question about who said you all are going to be paid December 20th, because I never said it. And I think you were right with that. You were right with when you said you never said it. What you might not know, Minister, is that your consultant from Curacao, Mr. Dahl, in a meeting with the police and their union, clearly stated, you are getting your money December 20th. That's why you get the app from the APFO, because their members heard the same story. And that's why they wanted to know. So you see, Minister, now we're going full circle. It is easy to shoot at people if you don't know the whole story. But the story came from your camp. They didn't make up the story. The story came from your camp, Minister. And that's unfortunately because, again, let me clearly state for the record, Minister, I have a lot of respect for you, but I think you made a blunder on Wednesday. And I think you all got to come together and solve this matter. This is not a matter for the media. This is not a matter to fight out in the media. Go and solve your problems. The safety of this country is more important than who's right or wrong. You don't want the police officers to start distrusting their union. Because if that happens, you know what happens then? Chaos. Because they're going to say, well, I don't have nothing to do with the union. The union don't speak for me. Because the union holding back evidence or information from me according to the minister. You see, we're going to create a problem that we can't solve. Because distrust is a serious, serious issue we have in this country. We are being led astray now in an argument that can be handled behind closed doors, and leaking of information should stop. Stop sensationalizing this matter, and let's fix it so that everybody can move forward. Minister, I know you are capable of doing this. I think you should take the high road and call in everybody. You all have a meeting looking at each other and respecting each other, not trying to intimidate each other, not trying to ensure that if this one do this, then this is going to be the consequences. We got to get away from this nonsense now. Let's solve the problem of the function books. Let's get some hard deadlines and let's move on. I think that is the best way we can do this, because if this doesn't happen, I only see this getting worse, Minister. I only see this getting worse. And Minister, Parliament has a role. You dismissed the motion of Parliament that the High Councils, like the Raad van Advies or the SER or the General or the Chamber, don't have to worry about the motion. That is correct. Parliament normally doesn't call them to answer. They call the ministers to answer, because their function is to overview the functioning of the government. And motions are not only desires, because some people like to say, oh, it's just a desire. When you get a motion of no confidence, that ain't a damn desire now. That's your neck. So motions do have value. And I don't think we should just throw, because on convenience, we sometimes push motions aside. We got to be careful. I think the respect to Parliament should not be lost in this discussion. Again, I'm just saying this to ensure that we all on the same wavelength, because I already see another MP got into this, and it started in the newspaper, and I think it was own up to failures, carry out task promise, an MP tells the minister. You see, we gotta be careful, because this is how things, if you don't watch out, go spin totally out of control. Minister, you have the lead on this process. Pull everybody together, have a discussion behind closed doors, and move on. The country can use the stability, and the country's safety should not be placed in any kind of quagmire because of egos in this situation. Lewis Brown's reinstatement and the way forward. You know, I read this article and I had a good laugh. Look, I really had a good laugh. The reinstatement of Lewis Brown is going to happen, people, by the hook or the crook, like the old people say. You know, I heard the minister speaking about dereliction of duty, and it was proven, and the punishment didn't fit the crime. Already, he's starting to talk about the crime. Look, the dereliction of Lewis Brown, the dereliction of the duty of Lewis Brown, was that he didn't get the approval of the minister to execute the water rights deal with Alegria in writing, as a good civil servant would have done. That's it, people. That's it. All right? But what the minister forgets to talk about is what the rest of the verdict said. The verdict said that after all of the emails, WhatsApps, and the 14-minute discussion between Lewis Brown and the minister, the courts believe that the minister gave Lewis Brown permission to continue. You know what is scary? The report that was made by the committee, the Committee from Personnel Affairs that investigated this matter, came up with a report stating that they cannot state definitely that Lewis Brown had permission or didn't have permission. They can't. So there was doubt. There is doubt there. Now, again, the courts saw through the smoke screen. How is it? Because the WhatsApps are in the verdict. A lot of WhatsApps are in the verdict. How is it that when Mr. Brown tells you it is an extremely important matter, we are tied with court cases, that your answers are, I'm busy with my family right now, but I'm going to check it out later. And then you keep going this way. At no point in time between May 1st and May 5th, when Lewis Brown and the minister were having a discussion, that the minister put in writing to him, I don't agree, don't do it. At no point in time. You know why? Because he agreed. Because he agreed to it. That's why he never put it in writing directly to Lewis Brown, I don't agree, don't do it. But something went wrong after that. Something went wrong, because in June, when the documents came for signature, oh, now we fly out. Oh, now we in the high horse. Oh, Lewis Brown, this. Listen, man. I worked with Lewis Brown for many years. When he was the head of RUM, when he went to projects management, and when he came back as SG of FROMI. There are a few things I can tell you about Brown. Brown is not an easy man to convince if he doesn't agree with something. I'll tell you that much. I have never seen Brown take a bribe, cut a deal. I don't necessarily agree with every decision he makes. But you know what? That's his cross to bear, because he's responsible for that decision. There have been advices I wrote, he told me he don't agree with it. Then he had to stick a memo to that and send it up to the minister. because that's the way it works. My problem is simple. Lewis Brown did his job. Remember, it is 2 previous ministers that agreed to giving the water rights, not Lewis Brown. Lewis Brown is an SG. He doesn't decide. He doesn't. The minister does. And Minister Gitterson and Weaver had agreed to it in the sense of putting down memos or emails or WhatsApps. And in continuity in government, Brown stepped over to the new minister, laid forward the court case, etc., 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 and they moved on. And yes, the court said, listen, this is a high sensitive something. Lewis should have known better and get it in writing. I agree. But that doesn't mean that the man, in my opinion, committed dereliction of duty. How many things are done in this government and in the previous governments on a word of mouth? A lot. A lot is done. In my present court case, a lot of things were word of mouth or were habit in government. And I was accused of not breaking the law in the sense of taking the money, but breaking the law because the bills were wrong. But for 12, 15 years, we're doing it so. Every minister sat there, saw this. But the court said, no, it's wrong. And everybody went along. So in appeal, I'll deal with it because I have everything in writing now. Didn't have it in the first instance, but I got it now. But it's to show you, you work on the word of a superior. I am convinced, I am convinced the minister gave Lewis Brown permission. But something else happened, and he went at Brown. Most probably Brown also disagreed to sign some other Nancy things that he wanted, and he went. But I need the minister to understand. Politicians come and go. Civil servants normally stay. You fought a good battle, you lost. Put your damn ego aside, reinstate the man. That ministry is in shambles. It needs leadership, and you and your cronies can't give it. Put back Lewis Brown and try to make something in that ministry yet functionable. Because right now, it's a disaster. And all those that feel, oh, Boncampa, that's not true, crap with smoky pipe. I know a little better. Been in that ministry for 24 years. I think I understand the ministry, and I can see when it's failing. And to come and say, oh, I collect 6 million in the... This is a nonsense, man. Look at the ministry. Look at the functioning. You can't get turned out. You can't fix roads. You can't do this. You can't do that. Please, man. Please. Put your ego aside. Put country first. Hopefully then, that ministry will start functioning. Because I can tell you from now, pull up your big pants. Alegria coming for the land. Pull up your pants. Alegria coming for that land. Let me see you wiggling now. Because this is going to become interesting. This is going to become a legal battle between you all and Alegria now. Because the base of what you did and how you did it is going to become the question mark now in courts. Lying is a difficult thing to get away with in courts. The democratic deficit COHO focal point are on the agenda for January 12th and 13th in Sint Maarten. So come Thursday, Friday now, the 3 prime ministers and the state secretary are going to be discussing how they're going to move forward with the democratic deficit and the 3 countries and the COHO. Now, not going to dwell too much on it for the mere fact that I don't know enough. I haven't seen enough in the media. The position of the democratic deficit is a simple one. We are 1 vote out of the 16. How do you solve that? Get out of it. Get out of that group. Right now, we are a member of the Kingdom Council of Ministers with the Minister Plenipotentiary. That's the person that sits in there. Same goes for Curaçao, same goes for Aruba, and 13 ministers from the Netherlands. How in God's name you ever think you're going to get anything. It ain't gonna work. So the discussion is this, because it's a twofold discussion. What does democratic deficit means for us constitutionally and legally? Because those are the two critical things. It has an impact on us financially because we have the CFT with the RFT law. That's one. The charter is in shambles. That gotta move. Article 3, 44, 50, 51, with the governors and all them, the right to do certain things. These are things because when we want to do something, they impose on us in the Kingdom Council of Government. They impose sanctions on us. These are the things that will become this discussion. Anything different to that is a joke, because the dispute regulation that would have given us any kind of fallback position on, the Dutch don't want to hear nothing about it being binding. So if it's not going to be binding, then it makes no sense, people. You got to put all of it together to understand this discussion. Otherwise, this discussion means nothing. Now, the COHO is another story. Because remember, the three prime ministers made up a new position to be discussed. And it wasn't discussed in the past because it needed some more time. It's going to be discussed now. My question is this. So what is the COHO? What exactly are we going to be discussing? Because the Dutch said Sint Maarten and Aruba did brilliant with what's happening with the country packages. We did our work. We are up to par. We are pushing good. So why do we need COHO? Why do we need to go through a whole new administrative ramification? Isn't it working the way it is? If yes, let's continue it. If that's what the discussion is going to be about, you got my 100% support. Other than that, we don't know what's going on. But I find it a pity that we're going to be discussing things now again and Parliament is not fully aware of it, on where you're going or what you're going to agree to if you have to agree. So I need to understand really what the position is. I truly, truly, truly need to understand what those are. But I want to believe if we want to get out of this democratic deficit, we just need to step out of the Kingdom Council of Ministers and not be subjected to their decisions. Because if that's the case, then the democratic deficit don't make no difference to us, because we are not subjected to their decisions anyway. And as a autonomous country, that's how it should have been from day one. But because of the flawed charter, it is not. We all agree the charter flawed. Even the Dutch agree. So I hope that the charter becomes the discussion in the democratic deficit and the dispute regulation instead of the democratic deficit itself, because that don't really mean nothing. But also, you know, maybe we need to agree what all is our responsibility beside passport, army, you know, those type of things, and really see where we go. But you know what I would love to know, and I hope the Prime Minister can talk about it on Wednesday. What's the position of the Council of Advice, the SER, the General Audit Chamber, on these matters? Because I know that other countries have asked those entities to do this. Did we do the same? Did we here do the same? Because I know we like to jump in at the end, so we were not part of the preparatory track, and we would have to agree to everything, like how we had to agree to the 12.5% because we were never part of the discussion in the beginning. So we just took over what Aruba and Curacao would agree to. Again, are we going to merge our position with those of the other countries if we're on the same wavelength? Because if we're not on the same wavelength, it's going to become much more interesting. All right, beach chair and beach usage by beach users. I pulled this up a minute because I was intrigued by it when I read it on Facebook. Because there was a whole thing about, I think the beach in question was Mullet Bay, about beach chair owners abusing persons using the beach but not renting from them. Something in that sense the whole story started. Other people said, yeah, but you didn't have the whole story, etc., etc., etc. So, again, the question is, what are the rules and regulations? Because people don't just go and put chairs on the beach. They get a vending license from the government. They get an area appointed to them in their license. I know when I was in public works here, there was a whole to-do about a vendor who had a license to put chairs in front of Holland House. And the hotel says, look, but we have chairs too. We want to put them in front of our hotel. You see, not because you have the business there means that the beach in front is yours. Depending on how the government had given out licenses, they'll have to then adjust the licenses. But the licenses are normally given to businesses, sole proprietorship, vendors, whoever that want to make use of exploiting a section of the beach to put up beach chairs and umbrellas. That's what it is. And there are rules set to that. How much chairs you can use, the separation between the chairs, how far from the water so people can walk in front the seaside and you're not blocking it with chairs. Those things are all in the license. And TIAT goes around, because I know they have done it. They were by my son too, so I know they just go and check the beaches and check the beach chairs, and it works. Again, I don't understand the fight, but I think what I missed in the whole article was the rules and regulations. Because there are rules and regulations. And again, if a vendor goes outside of the rules and regulations stipulated in his license, then that should be discussed. That should be addressed. But if a vendor has the right to lay out chairs and umbrellas there, you can't come and say, I'm going to sit down here on the beach now and put my towel. That is utter nonsense. The good gentleman or the good lady is making their daily living there. And this thing about the beach is only for sitting and enjoying and listening, that is not true. The beach is there also for economic diversity. Guess what? We run a tourism industry. So we got to be careful how we go and attack people that are doing this sort of business. Again, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking that they have a right to do their beach chairs. Look, somebody's treating somebody bad. That's a whole different matter. If you come and talk to me in a way that I don't appreciate, I'm going to let you know. Some people are intimidating and they frighten other people. But at the end of the day, if they have a license to exploit, you also have to respect that. They too are trying to make a living. They're not there to hamper you. But if they got 100 square meters of beach to do their business, there are 4 businesses on Mullet Bay Beach. 4. That beach, I think each of them got what? 50 chairs? That's 200 chairs. That beach could carry 3,000 chairs. So there's enough room on the beach to sit. That they're using in front of their place, I'm sure that's the way the license was given to them. Because why would they put chairs 100 meters up the road and then their servants got to walk 100 meters up the road? Look, it's a beach bar. They're trying to make some money. And I think we got to work with each other instead of fighting each other for all these type of things. At the end of the day, I spoke about Mullet Bay Beach. And I have stated it to this government and to the public of Sint Maarten. Mullet Bay, and sorry going back to court because he believed he owns some resorts in Mullet Bay. He don't own nothing. What you got to do is pay back the $1 billion that he stole, that he took out of the companies and funneled through his other companies. That's what he got to worry about. Instead of Mullet Bay and Mullet Bay. And Mullet Bay yours. The central bank, through the courts, have it under curatela right now. And they have two things to do, either sell it or exploit it. We are a 22% shareholder in the central bank. The government of Sint Maarten needs to request a purchase agreement with the central bank for that property. They need to do that. Come to an agreement, and the government pays back the central bank so the money could go into the fund. Let the government of Sint Maarten use the property in Sint Maarten to make money for Sint Maarten. Get a hotel chain that can manage it. But we're going to take the road that's going through Mullet Bay right now, and we're going to put it along the coastline. So that proper parking, we can create at least 300-400 parking then. The golf course remains intact because there's nobody driving in between it anymore. And you can come to Mullet Bay, park up, use the beach, all alongside the beach. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Because it prevents people from having to park in a parking lot and then walk all the way up to the beach. And that's why they're getting frustrated. Because when you park up in the parking lot, there's a big beach bar there doing business. And right higher up, there's another beach bar. So for them to get a place to sit on the beach, they got to continue walking up the beach. And if they got cooler, they get frustrated. Put a road. They could drive all alongside the beach. Choose your place, put a few public toilets, and we got to go, Sint Maarten. Where there's a will, there's a way. You got to want it though. Because if you don't want it, it makes no sense. Elections 2023, how far are we willing to go? Now, this is something I was going to discuss last week already. And then I said, no, let me wait another week. Let me really look at this thing. Look, this government, life depends on the appointment of the new Minister of Theatre. If that doesn't happen, this government collapses. There was an article in a media house that this week sometime the minister come in. The new minister. Personally, I think that's not true, but I do hope so. I hope that we can get stability. This country needs stability. It is already an election year and it's going to get nasty. You already saw how they threw fellas under the bus with the ESP program. Again, it's going to be a nasty election, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't have a stable government while this is happening. I find it extremely long that the screening is ongoing. I find it extremely, extremely long. But then there are more things that are now starting to come out. I saw one there that there's some deal for $2 million, some big payday for a project down by the harbor, and that will keep the boys happy. Another one is that there's a Bitcoin group from Dubai coming to Sint Maarten that will rent the building of one of the handlers of the two boys. Look, are these rumors? I don't think so. The sources were very credible. The problem is this. What does this mean for this country? That we were going to wheel and deal to browse through another year when it is only going more and more backwards? Look, again, the only way we're going to reach January 2024 is if the government stays intact. If you ask me personally if it will stay intact, my answer is no. It will not stay intact. Not with the magical 8. The old group of the National Alliance, they will remain faithful to their leader. I can say that point blank. The others, they're not going to. Because all of them want to showcase something for elections. So they are going to force, not request, force, because They have the magical vote. They're going to force it. You already saw how things does work with the chair. You also saw how the leader of the UP slammed in to the Prime Minister about a shareholder representative of GB and how he has asked it before to her in meetings and blah blah. So now he coming to the floor of Parliament because she will give an answer. And after that meeting, the Prime Minister started screaming about how she ain't going in jail for nobody. That was before this. So you understand the jockeying for position has started. It has truly started. When you see what happened last week in the Council of Ministers, where a question was asked and the misappropriation of funds became a discussion. And while the minister did not mention the names, the media house printed 3 names. What I find, unfortunately, was that those 3 people were aspiring politicians that might want to run once again, or maybe some of them have said, I done. One of those politicians, though, was on the board of GB. And what I don't understand is that, like how the minister said, this wasn't an overnight something. This thing has been going on for a while. How did he pass the screening? Or did the ministers them hide this incident because of which list he was on then? You see, you all gotta be careful when you play this game of hide and seek. Because like they say, everything in the dark comes to light. Been there in my life already. I know what it means. Some of the young Turks don't know yet. But they're gonna find out the hard way. It's crystal clear to me. Again, I think we need to be careful. Tomorrow there are 2 court verdicts being given. One is to a politician and one is to a non-politician. Yet those were not mentioned on Wednesday. And the question is why? Stop playing politics, people. This is not the way. Because if this is the way, we are going to start addressing problems in this country of misappropriation of public funds. We got a problem. Because you got to remember one thing. Is there any sort of wisdom in handling these matters other than cutting off your nose to spite your face? Because this is another black eye for Sint Maarten. This is another black eye for Sint Maarten. The matter has to be dealt with. I wholeheartedly agree. But to make it a parade, a political parade, is crazy. Because the other people were not mentioned. So why are you selectively taking out people? Again, like I said, politics is a nasty, nasty game. And it is now starting to show its colors. 2024 going to be a nasty election. I can tell you that from now. And it's just a matter of time before they turn the guns on others, including myself. And then we go from there. I'm sure they noticed by now, I ain't afraid of a little action. Because my ammunition watches full yet. The president of the central bank offered some tips how to lower unemployment, inequality, and poverty. Now, I truly enjoyed this article. Why? Because it's an article that was written on the 15th of December last year, and up until this day, nobody seems to want to pick up on what the good gentleman is saying. I'm not hearing it. But he said, adopt an inclusive growth approach. It is widely acknowledged that over the past decade, several shocks amplified unemployment, inequality, and poverty across the monetary union, including Sint Maarten, says the central bank in the bank's December 2022 economic bulletin. Think of hurricanes, and this is my piece, think of the Gonzalo, the man-made hurricanes of 2015, Irma, COVID-19, just to name a few of the bad ones. In particular, the vulnerable groups in society included the lower educated youngsters and migrants were often affected by these shocks, the bank president states. In a society with high economic and social disparities, opportunities to prosper are not equally distributed, and consequently, the full wealth potential is not achieved in a country. This is something that I am happy to say that now is working on diligently to change. That we spread the wealth. Nation, opportunity, and wealth. We want to create that opportunity for you to make wealth. And the bank president is saying it is not being distributed equally. Therefore, the central bank president recommends that as the economic recovery from the COVID-19 crisis takes hold, both Curaçao and Sint Maarten should adopt an inclusive growth approach to not only achieve growth in terms of quantity of goods and services produced, but also to tackle unemployment, poverty, and inequality. You notice this inequality keeps coming back? It was the same thing with the slavery. They never spoke of equality in all their speeches. Here too, poverty goes hand in hand with inequality. Social disparities goes hand in hand with inequalities, not getting the proper opportunities to do something. See, the central bank has recently conducted a study on the effect of inequality on economic growth in small countries. The Economic Bulletin of December included a feature article with the main findings of this study. Due to the lack of up-to-date figures on inequality in Curaçao and Sint Maarten, the study data used from 43 other small countries that can serve as a proxy for Sint Maarten and Curaçao was used. Again, here we go, that we're using data from other places because we have nothing. That's such a common denominator now in anything we want to do is we notice we have no data. But what the study does not confirm in its recent findings in economic literature is in which large inequalities have a negative impact on economic growth. So in other words, your country's economy will continue growing even though we are getting more poor people or social inequality among us. The economy will so people say, yeah, but our economy is doing well. But yes, but people are still getting poor because you share in the wealth. This is what is happening. This is what the central bank is also warning for. So alternatively, policies aimed at tackling inequality within society could be implemented without a concern of constraining economic growth. So, what does it mean? Do things to stop the inequality. Do things to stop the poverty, because it will not affect necessarily your economic growth. So, maybe one such policy, for example, would be the subsidizing of the minimum wage earners and the pensioners, for example, house rent, utilities, or food, or whatever. So the central bank is telling us, hey boys, you can do these things. But I am sure we'll find a critic in Sint Maarten that says, oh God, you can't do these things. Please don't do these things because they're going to destroy this and they're going to destroy that. Because we prefer to continue the inequalities by ensuring that the wealth is not distributed accordingly. Again, this is a quite complex situation though. I don't want to just throw it out as if it's a very simplistic something. But again, we got to start someplace. We got to understand that growth is inclusive when it provides equal opportunity for all in society to contribute to and benefit from economic growth. Again, like the now is saying, share the wealth. Share it. Again, we got to remember this. The policy agenda to achieve a higher growth path in Sint Maarten is known by all. It isn't that we don't know what to do. We need to improve our investment climate. How we do that is the question. Where we say yes and where we say no is the policy. Enhancing the resilience to shock through economic diversification. So we got to make sure that we change up our economy a little bit, that we can handle economic shocks. Think on agriculture and fisheries for food sustainability. Think on weed as an economic spin-off. Think on the financial offshore market. Think on those things. Remember, the fisheries, you have the Sabre Bank. Agriculture, you have technologies, you have containers, you have some land we can use. Again, we talk about strengthening the resilience of critical infrastructure. GB Water and its underground utilities. TLM, the airport, the harbor, safety, all of these things, we need to do them so that when we have a hurricane, the airport is up and running, the harbor is up and running, we didn't lose electricity, water is properly protected, we can do proper water management. Look, these things are possible, and most of the information how to do it is there. Remember, majority of GB's stuff is already underground, TLM and them are underground. So we are light years ahead of a lot of other countries. We really are not that bad off, but we are not there yet. You understand? We are not fully there. And again, the last thing they said is they got to ensure financial and monetary stability are also crucial conditions for higher economic growth in the country. I have my doubt in the sense that I believe that Sint Maarten should do a full review on the seceding from the central bank and making an agreement with the Netherlands, the Dutch central bank, in the sense that they monitor our dollarized system for 10 years, train our people so that we can have our own monetary agency. I believe that. I sincerely believe that. I think we have people like Eugene Holiday that can pull a wagon like this, can do this. We have to use our own people. We have to stop being dependent all the time. If Sabre, Statia, and Bonaire can be dollarized, so can Sint Maarten. We don't need a Caribbean guilder. That 1% foreign exchange tax, we can levy it differently with a transaction tax of 0.5% that will yield 3 times the amount as the foreign exchange tax is doing right now. So again, we need to be brave enough to start doing things different. And if the government of today is not willing to take that or is not able to understand how to do it, it's time to move on. Then it's time to move on. But we got to do what we got to do. I think, at the same time, however, to make the growth inclusive, the emphasis on policy actions must shift. For example, financial inclusion through better actions to finance for small and medium enterprises should be included in the policy agenda to improve the investment climate. Now, this seems to be a stumbling block right now on this island. Banks are willing to give you a loan to buy a car, but banks are not willing to give you a mortgage for your house or a loan for your business. The ESP program seems not to be working the way it should work. Too many people are failing. So again, we need to understand how the small and medium businesses can be helped in such a way, because that's the backbone of your economy. The moms and pops, that's the backbone of your economy. But we are not helping them enough. So we got to figure it out a little better. The economic diversification strategy should also include actions to encourage investments in alternative sources of energy, such as sun, sea, and wind, of which Sint Maarten is endowed with. Now, again, this is something that in the resiliency plan, they never opted to go for alternative energies. All they wanted to do was make GB resilient by ensuring that everything was on the ground, that the water tanks were back, and that the power plant had a better roof. That was it. If we would have taken 40 million or even 20 million in a revolving fund, where GB is responsible for the complete placement / management of the alternative solar panels. We go with schools, government-owned buildings, people that say, listen, I am willing to go along. So the ESP program, I'm willing to go along and make this country more resilient by putting solar panels on my roof, making sure I drop my bill in electricity so I can become a little wealthier. 1. 2, a payment program. Because there are companies in Sint Maarten right now that are doing it. I know that because I'm looking at it myself. We might need to help them because it's going to be too expensive for the average man on the street. Because too many people are living in poverty. But that doesn't mean to say that they shouldn't have these type of benefits. Use the runway, the strip alongside the beach, and place solar panels there if need be. COHO has a huge solar panel for their people. What are we waiting on? Put 3, 4 wind turbines on the east coast of Sint Maarten. There was a study done with this, with a few engineering firms. I have the studies if you're all interested. It can be done. Alternative energy is what has saved the Netherlands right now with the whole gas problems with Russia. We don't do alternative energy. Saba has it, Statia has it, Bonaire has it, Aruba has it, Curacao has it. Windmills and solar parks. What do we have? Nothing. We need to do this. Minister Vromi, this is something you got to pick up with and run. Instead of worrying about where you're going to place Louis Brown. Put him back in Vromi. Louis Brown knows exactly how these things work. The man can do the project for you. Waste of energy. You've gotten rid of a lot of garbage instead of blaming Christopher Emmanuel for putting a dump there that you had no clue that it was your farmer leader put it there. But again, like I said, don't want to beat up on you too much because I know you're going to go home and cry later. We have things that we can do. We need to do them. We can use some funds that have not been allocated properly to do certain things. Take some of the money from the landfill, that 30, 40 million you got there, and put it to good use. Put a recycling plant in place. Let's start trying to get rid of some of the recyclables. Start doing some investment in alternative energy. And bring in people that are willing, be it Dutch, be it American, be it Spanish, be it African, I don't care, Chinese, that are willing to put a plant there for free as long as they have a paid power purchase agreement from GB for the next 20 years. And you will have alternative energy. You'll get rid of a lot of your garbage. Maybe not everything, but at least you will be better than you are today for the next 20 years. This is what we have to want to do. Because if we can't do this, then we ain't going no place as a country. Again, today, you know, when I look at the local entrepreneurship, the bank says, make it more inclusive with the tourism product. And I'm saying, no. Because those are mediocre jobs. That's a mediocre income. That's the That's exactly the pillar that has us at 70% earning less than 3,000 guilders a month. That pillar. That's also the pillar that made Sint Maarten Sint Maarten. It's called a speed. But it's time to change. And there are a lot of local entrepreneurs that can go into the production industry. And the biggest problem we have in getting local people to succeed is an article that Mike Granger wrote, and I hope he publishes it today on Facebook again, or maybe if he can attach it to this podcast. By the way, please share my podcast today. I think a lot of good information was put in here. But Mike, you wrote a piece. Because we don't know what our client wants, we very often don't deliver the product they seek. Walt Disney said it best. Build it for them and they will come. Build it for you and no one will come. So you see, there are things, yes, Shoes, I agree with you. The Mortgage Guarantee Fund exists. It was to be incorporated and there was even a candidate to run it. But I don't know what happened. I think they stopped talking, so the name was moved. But again, I think local entrepreneurs need to really go in and start doing different things. I know of people that make rum, make soaps, make creams. I think Mrs. Carty, don't want to single her out, but she had this Aurora, this smelling thing. She has it in the States and everything now. She used the network of social media to get it out there. And the young entrepreneurs can do this. You all are much more versed than some of we old ones when it comes to social media. So again, while I understand some of us can get into the business of tourism, I don't want you to only be doing things to tourists, because you have 60,000 people living in your country that can also buy from you. So that's also your market. Don't just throw the market through the window. That's the market that is there when there is no tourist. You know how restaurants survive in Sint Maarten? When they have a rock solid local base. Because when there are no cruise ships and very few tourists, you know who's going to eat in their restaurant? Local people. That's why always cater to local people. Now, I think that we have gone through a lot of things today. The last thing I believe I want to touch with the central bank was they said to invest in human capital. And I left that for last because our investment in human capital has truly, truly been a sad story. While educators have a love for education and children, our country seems not to be able to tie the industries and the school graduates to each other. And the NEPA is doing a great job, but we need more. Because while, listen carefully, while we are in the business of tourism, construction and all these other things are significant. But I don't think we have enough going on in that field. I know the young lady, Miss Bryson, is doing a great job in the nursing aspect so that we can get our own nurses, because we need our own nurses, we need our own teachers, we need these people to take care of us and to teach our children. We need our own. Nothing wrong with people come here from another country to help us, but we need to start educating our own. We need to be proud of our own. We need to respect our own. We need to do that. Once you're a professional, you will be respected. I think we need to create space in our budgets to ensure that the education in this country gets what it deserves. The law has passed for the higher education. Let's see how much money they're going to give the University of Sint Maarten. Let's just see. Because talk is the cheapest thing we have in this country. In closing, presently, we are at the mercy of a few people. Not the magical eight, a few within the magical eight. And this will result in Sint Maarten continuing its downhill spiral. The fights between the government and the civil servants does nobody good. And egos are now taking center stage to the detriment of the country and its people. Like I said, Minister, you lost your fight. Please put your ego aside and put Louis Brown back to work, as your ministry is in shambles and God knows the government and the ministry needs his expertise badly. The lagging of the tax reform in the country and the unnecessarily continuous suffering of the less fortunate minimum wage earners, the seniors, because of egos trump sanity is just sad. Solutions are available, but the will isn't. What will our country be committed to once again when it comes to COHO and the democratic deficit? As until today, nothing is clear on what the PM has stated Sint Maarten's position will be regarding COHO. Our country packages are coming along fine, the Dutch stated. So why do we need COHO? The secretary that forced it down our throat is now presently recuperating from a nervous breakdown. Calm as a bitch is always being said. In this case, it's true. Our election will be decided by the fate of the coalition sticking together as long as possible during 2023. Once the Minister of Theatre is sworn in, we will need to see the other movements in the come, especially with the Harbour project. And I fear it will not ride through 2023 as some hope, including myself. Stability in the government is a very difficult act to balance. And when the magical eight right now, the ringmaster has to understand which show is playing which day of the week in the circus called government. Bunks is out. Enjoy the rest of the week. Stay safe, stay healthy. One love.